Some breaking news to bring your way. The 2020 National Baseball Hall of Fame class has been announced. Derek Jeter getting in on his first year of eligibility. We will have those numbers for you in just a bit here. Larry Walker getting in on his last chance of eligibility. They will be joined by Ted Simmons and Marvin Miller. Joined now by David Sampson, host of Nothing Personal, to break down this news that we just received moments ago. David, your initial reactions to the class. At one point, it was looking like Jeter might go in alone. We get Larry Walker in, beating the buzzer. When you look at Jeter, when you look at Walker, when you look at this class, what are the first things that come to mind?
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind is I thought it would be Jeter alone, and that's what I had said, but I'm very happy for Larry Walker. You know, this was his last time on the ballot. This was an opportunity. The ballot had been cleared the last couple of years, so writers get 10 slots. That's all they can vote for is 10 people. And so more writers had a chance to include Larry Walker this year in his last year, and it got him over the hump. Very deserving guy. People were worried about the Colorado effect, but you're talking about a player who, when we faced him, we feared him, whether it was in Colorado or at our home field. He was just good, and now he's a Hall of Famer.
When we turn our attention to Jeter, obviously the only question here is the tally, the vote. Will it be unanimous or not as they continue to release that information? Does that matter to a guy like Derek Jeter, or does that matter to these ball players? Obviously only Mariano Rivera, the only other unanimous election to the Hall of Fame. Is that something that a feather in the cap of Derek Jeter?
Yeah, any player who says that they don't pay attention to that or that they have no ego, they're not being very forthcoming. Yes, it matters to Derek Jeter that he becomes unanimous with his teammate Mariano Rivera. No question about it. They pay attention to this. Players pay attention when you put videos on the scoreboard in between innings, how many times their face or their highlights are shown. So I assure you that they pay attention to everything.
David, Mount Rushmore only has 4 heads on it. Derek Jeter becomes the 20th Yankee ball player to go into the Hall. Is he on the top 4, or where do you slate him in your all-time Yankees?
He's, you know, obviously him and Rizzuto, I'd say, are the top shortstops, but Mount Rushmore gets pretty crowded pretty quickly because I'm going to have to put Babe Ruth there off the top of my head. I'm going to have to put Joe DiMaggio. I'm going to have to put Mickey Mantle. I'm going to have to put Yogi Berra. That's just off the top of my head, and I'm out of spaces already. Now, Jeter certainly has the jewelry. He was the leader, 20 seasons, obviously all with the Yankees, multiple championships, including 3 in a row, 98 to 2000, and a loss in 2001 to the Diamondbacks, in 2003 to our Marlins. One of the greats, but Mount Rushmore, that's something a little different.
Very tough. We just got the numbers. Derek Jeter in with 99.7% of the vote, 1 ballot short. Obviously, the search begins now, but what's your reaction when you hear that number?
So we talked about this on the Q today. Was a writer going to stand up and say no more unanimous ballots? Mariano Rivera is the only player, and that was probably a mistake. The fact is that we'll find that writer, and that writer will be, right? He'll be outed, and he will have an answer, or she will have an answer. I completely agree. He should not have been a unanimous choice. I thought he would be, but he should not have been, because how can you say that he is greater than Ken Griffey, even though now we do by a few points, or the Babe Ruths or the Cy Youngs of the world? So I'm actually fine with him not being unanimous. Let's make Mariano Rivera the only player of all time and say that's just an outlier.
Pretty outstanding stuff. 99.7% of the vote as you see it there. Derek Jeter in the Hall. The 2020 class. We're joined by David Sampson, host of Nothing Personal, to break it all down. You make a point there about almost the writers standing up a bit and saying that Mo will be the only unanimous. They've taken a stance many times in the past on the guys who come from the steroid era. Again, another year passes. No Clemens, no Bonds. They continue to trend upwards. But is this ever going to happen? Do you think it ever gets past that 75% point?
So we're down to 2 years left, right? And this is definitely an indictment on the steroid era. And remember, these are writers. The writers are people, and they've got views, their view of Cooperstown, their view of what a Hall of Fame should look like. In my opinion, the Hall of Fame needs to be an example of our sport, the greatest members of our sport, with explanations of all eras, whether it's the dead ball era, whether it's performance-enhancing drugs, whether it's sign stealing. I'm not willing to say that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens should not be in the Hall of Fame. Let's face it, one of the players who I obviously care a lot about, Pudge Rodriguez, is in the Hall of Fame. Is it possible he took steroids? I would say. Therefore, Are we letting one person in but not others? Is it that they didn't come clean and admit it? All sorts of things matter to different writers. Look, Derek Jeter, it mattered to one writer that he not go in unanimously. Think about the power that you feel as a member of the Baseball Writers Association of America, that you become the story. You become the breaking news. That power can be intoxicating.
The only straight line in baseball runs from home plate to the foul pole, and we know that well. A rising tide lifts all boats, but a sinking one does as well. With the recent scandals that we've seen out of Houston, do you think that helps, hurts, or affects Bonds and Clemens in any way?
No, I think there's a big difference between the sign stealing and PEDs, and obviously I'm a bit of an island here. There are people who say the sign stealing is the greatest scandal, controversy in baseball history. I don't see it that way. When I look at PEDs, I look at someone who is doing something that absolutely impacts his ability to perform and change outcomes in a game. Sign stealing, from my standpoint, even if you think you know what's coming and you're getting the information, you could still mix up the signs. When I ran a team, if they were stealing our signs, I blamed us. I never said we're being out-technologied or we're being outsmarted. I would look inside our clubhouse and say, listen, we have to do a better job of sequencing. We have to change the signs even pitch to pitch. Because if we look like, you can tell when you're in the game, when hitters know what's coming. When they're spitting on spin is what we call it. When they're just sitting on the fastball and they're taking pitches that we know for a fact they should not be taking, you know that you have to do something different. Either you're tipping your pitches or alternatively they're stealing your signs. It's up to me to change that. When you're shooting yourself in the tuchus with steroids and all of a sudden you change uniform size and hat size from one October to the next April, obviously there's something going on, and you can't game plan that. It doesn't matter stealing signs or technology. That changes outcomes. It's a difference.
Absolutely. Let's punctuate this on a Jeter note. Obviously, 20 years, all in the Bronx, 5 rings to show for it. What's your indelible image of Derek Jeter's years in the MLB?
Well, his years as a player, I have several images of Derek Jeter. I've known him, obviously, for a while. As on the field, my image of him is what he did against the Oakland A's when he came all the way from shortstop and made that flip play. And it just so happens that you're seeing it right now. And the reason why that's such an interesting play to me is he had a head that he knew not just where he was supposed to be, but he knew where other people weren't. That's the key to making plays. And when you're on the field, when you're playing defensively or offensively, you have to know where everyone is. He had this ability on the field just to make himself better. When you look at the skills of Derek Jeter, for me, I wouldn't say he's got the greatest skills of any shortstop. I wouldn't say he's got the greatest bat, the greatest glove. I wouldn't say any of that. He had the greatest baseball mind, and his ability to stay the course in the Bronx was unparalleled. To deal with Steinbrenner, to deal with the media circus, he had the ability to do it better than any Yankee player I've ever seen, and that's what makes him maybe one of the greatest Yankees, but I'm not putting him on Mount Rushmore just yet.
Not just yet. David Sampson, Hall of Fame stuff. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Here is another look at that class. Ted Simmons and Marvin Miller selected by Modern Era Committee. Meanwhile, Derek Jeter getting in on his first chance. Larry Walker getting in on his last. The 2020 class headed into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Hey, for more out of this, you can always tune in to Nothing Personal with David Sampson. He's going to have plenty of good stuff coming out of the Hall of Fame vote in what's been an eventful few weeks in the MLB. You can get that everywhere. All major podcasts are provided.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.